panteth for the water, so my soul longs after thee. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship thee. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship thee.
Hello dear friends. Okay, we are back once again, and today we will continue with the reflections on King Jeroboam. Yesterday we mentioned about the sin of Jeroboam, the steps taken by Jeroboam in order to prevent the people of the northern kingdom Israel from going to Jerusalem for worship. He established the rival temples. He set up the golden calf, and again he appointed non-Levite priests and also made parallel feasts. These sins of Jeroboam practically made the entire population of Israel idol worshippers. And towards the end of his reign, or after his death, we can see the people began to worship Yahweh himself, began to worship Baal instead of Yahweh, because they knew that calf represented Baal. Calf was the idol of god Baal. And when people began to worship the golden calf, they were led to think that it is the idol of not Yahweh but that of Baal. This thought became prevalent after some time. And we can see the people now began to worship Baal, and also as time went on, they began to worship Asherah, that is the goddess, a consort of Baal. Thus, just like the Canaanites, the people of Israel also fell into worship of Baal and Asherah. And Asherah was worshipped in the form of a pole. Pole means an wooden pole on which the figure of a goddess is carved, and they would set it under a green tree and would be worshipping that. Therefore, the people were practically worshipping Baal and Asherah. Thus we see, after the time of Jeroboam, there were three kinds of sins committed by the people. One is idolatry, and that is caused by King Jeroboam himself. The second is apostasy, that is forsaking Yahweh, they worship Baal and Asherah, worshipping other gods or Gentile gods. And the third type of sin they committed was this: they worshipped Yahweh as well as Baal and Asherah. And this phenomenon usually is called religious syncretism. 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 That is, taking different elements from different religions and make a kind of new religion. Therefore, they have done or they have fallen into these three sins, especially after the death of Jeroboam. And things went on, you can say. And around 875, we find a king called Omri, O-M-R-I, Omri. He was ruling Israel and he established his own dynasty. And he made the city of Samaria and declared Samaria to be the capital of Israel. And thereafter, Israel was known as Samaria also. And Samaria would mean the nation of Israel or the capital Israel. And after Omri, there was his son Ahab, who became king. And at this time, around 850 BC, Ahab was ruling the nation Israel, and he married the princess of Syrophoenicia, and she was called Jezebel. And Jezebel was a princess of the Syrophoenician king. And when she was taken to Samaria as the queen of Ahab, she brought with her her religion, her priests, and the prophets of Baal and Asherah. And she was a very assertive woman. And since she was an assertive type of woman, she took things into her own hands. When the king was reluctant to do something, it was she who took the leadership to execute the things as the king wanted or wished. Okay, please remember the story of the vineyard of Naboth. And we are familiar with the story. Naboth was not ready to give away his vineyard, even when the king was ready to offer 3 or 4 times the cost of the vineyard or the price of the vineyard. And what was the reason? This land where the vineyard stood or vineyard was planted was the plot of land given to the forefathers of Naboth. That is, at the time of the division of the land by Joshua. When Joshua divided the land among the tribes of Israel, and among the tribes again divided among the clans, and again from among the clans divided among the families. And this plot was given to the forefathers of Naboth. And according to the tradition for the Jews, the God-given land was considered to be their divine heritage. And that would mean it is the most precious thing that they have or that they can hold on to while on earth. Therefore, they will not sell the land to anybody else. And law did not allow it either. And therefore, Naboth asked for the vineyard, but he did not give it. And at this time, Jezebel, his wife, intervenes, and she devised a crooked plan, a deceitful plan, and she destroyed, or she found out a plan of deceit against Naboth, and he was stoned to death, we know. And then the king took hold of his vineyard. And from the story it would be clear that Jezebel was a type of woman who was so assertive and powerful, and she was even controlling the king of the nation. Okay, and this practically take place around 850 BC. And all the people began to worship Baal and Asherah at the insistence of Jezebel, we can say. And monotheism, that is, worship of the only God Yahweh, was practically becoming extinct, we can say. Almost all went after Baal. And we know the story of Prophet Elijah. He would make a complaint to Yahweh, there is nobody that follows you now. Everybody has gone after Baal. Therefore, from this statement it is clear that all are going after Baal. And at this situation, God, who sees everything, sent the mighty prophet Elijah to the scene. And Elijah appears on the scene. Nobody knows about his previous life or later life, we can say. He was called and he appears and he begins his prophetic ministry. And when he begins his prophetic ministry, you will find the mission entrusted to him by Yahweh is to re-establish the monotheistic belief or the belief in Yahweh, because Yahweh is the only God. Baal and Asherah, they are not even gods. But how to establish this? We find in the book of Kings, first King and the book of beginning of the second Kings, the story of Elijah narrated. And God sends Elijah, and when Elijah appears on the scene, there is a famine on the land. And not only that, people are forsaking Yahweh practically forever, or they are not worshipping Yahweh anymore. And as a punishment, there was a famine for 3 years, and at the end of which Yahweh sent Elijah to confront the king Ahab. And we know the story of what happens on Mount Carmel, the so-called famous contest between Elijah and the prophets of Baal. And both parties, that is Elijah on one side and prophets of Baal on the other, they made an understanding, or let us say they made a bet, and saying this, they are to prepare the victim for sacrifice, place it on the altar and cover with the wooden logs, but should not set fire to the sacrificial victim. Let both parties call upon their God, call on their God, and the God who answers with the fire from above or from the heavens will be considered the real God, and the other is not really God. The prophets of Baal made the preparations, and we see they cried out to Baal, but nothing happens. Then Elijah prepared for the sacrifice, and he cried out to the Lord and prayed, and fire fell down upon the altar and the victim, and it burned everything. And thus Yahweh helped Elijah to prove before the people that Yahweh is the only God. And therefore, he was able to re-establish monotheism as the religion of Israel. Therefore, this is the great contribution of Prophet Elijah. Okay, and after Elijah, Elisha also appears on the scene. Thus, the history goes forward. But later we find things are not better. People again slip into apostasy. And besides, there was a political advantage for the northern kingdom Israel and the southern kingdom Judah in the beginning of 8th century, that is from 800 to 750 BC. At this time, the political scenario changes. Assyria became strong in the 9th century, but now from about 800 to 750, Syria, the northern kingdom, that is the kingdom north of Israel, called Aramea also, or the country of Arameans, with the capital Damascus. The nation or the kingdom Syria declined. When they declined, the neighboring kingdom Israel benefited and profited from it, in the sense that Israel was able to conquer some of the vassal kingdoms of Syria. To make a country vassal kingdom was really a source of income, because now through the political treaty, the winning king will receive annual tribute from the defeated king. And thus, money began to flow into Israel. And besides, one more thing occurs now. After 800, the eastern kingdom, that is the kingdom in Mesopotamia, or the kingdom in the area of rivers Euphrates and Tigris, the Middle East. Assyria was the kingdom there. The Assyrian kingdom also declined. And the Assyrian king had control over all the nations in the Middle East, extending up to the kingdom of Israel and Judah, or up to Palestine. When Assyria declined in power, Israel and Judah benefited out of it. That is, they conquered the nations that were vassals to Assyria. Now, these kingdoms are made vassals of Israel and Judah. Again, to their advantage, they began to receive a lot of tribute, and that would imply lot of money came into, lot of silver, lot of gold came into these two nations, that is the northern kingdom Israel and the southern kingdom Judah. Okay, and therefore we see this phenomenon that occurred in the first half of the 8th century BC made Israel and Judah affluent nations. Plenty of riches, plenty of wealth was there. But we know when a country becomes rich, the treasures or the wealth or riches practically comes to be in the grip of a few. That is, even though country has so much of gold and silver and the riches, the poor people do not gain much from it. The rich becomes richer, and the poor, they are deprived of what they have even. And this is the situation that prevailed practically both in Israel and in Judah. Thus, even though the kingdoms of Israel and Judah became affluent, became very rich, and had so much of wealth, the poor people in the land, in the kingdoms, were suffering. They had no means available for a better living, and they were oppressed, persecuted, and they were practically deprived of all their rights even. And thus we see the poor, the orphan, and the widow. These three groups belongs to one particular group called the poor ones, or the poor people. And they are also called the poor of Yahweh. We know why it is called poor of Yahweh. And these poor people, since they have nobody to take care of them, nobody to speak for them, and nobody to stand for them, they cried out to Yahweh, and Yahweh was their protector, and therefore they became beloved to Yahweh, and hence this phrase arose or came to be used, the power of Yahweh. And when these people came in, the power of Yahweh, they had to suffer a lot because they did not enjoy, or they were not able to enjoy the result of the wealth accumulated. And thus we see social injustice prevailed. The poor became poorer. They were deprived of even the necessities of life, and the rich became richer. And this situation caused this serious sin, social injustice. That is, the people practiced injustice. The justice was not made available for the people, and that is what we can see. And therefore, when the people were leading a life of injustice, God was angry with them. And God sent mighty prophets after this event from 760 BC onwards. We find 4 important prophets were sent by Yahweh, 2 in Judah and 2 in Israel, the northern kingdom. First came Amos, and he did his prophetic ministry in Israel. Then came Hosea. He also was in Israel. From 760 to 740, the prophet Amos did the ministry, and 740 to 730 or 725, or the period is not very well established, but around 730, Hosea was sent to the northern kingdom. And both these prophets warned the people of Israel about 4 sins. Okay, earlier we mentioned about the 3 sins, remember? Idolatry, apostasy, religious syncretism. And now one more sin is added to the list, social injustice. We explained it just now. And therefore, these 2 prophets came in and they warned the people of Israel, unless you return from your evil ways, Yahweh will destroy you. Very solemn warning was given, but the people did not accept them. They thought these prophets are pronouncing judgments of condemnation, not because Yahweh has asked them to do it, but because they wanted to earn a name and fame for themselves. And that is the reason why they pronounce these kinds of oracles of doom or punishment. And they were not ready to be converted. And they went on their own way. And 2 other prophets, they were sent to Judah, Prophet Isaiah and Prophet Micah. They also gave warning to the people of Judah. And Micah would go to the extent of saying to the people of Jerusalem, because of you, Jerusalem will be plowed as a field. The temple city will be a city of ruins. and hence they thought Micah is speaking blasphemy because Jerusalem is a city of God because of the temple of Jerusalem, and the city of David will not be destroyed by any force. That was the way they were asked to do. And therefore we can see, and therefore we can see this. Because of the situation that prevailed there, that is the warning given by the prophets in the northern kingdom, they were not ready to accept it, and consequently, according to the warning given by the Lord, the kingdom of Israel was destroyed by Assyrians in 722.
All-powerful God, give us the wisdom to discover you, the intelligence to understand you, the diligence to seek after you, the patience to wait for you, eyes to behold you, and a life to proclaim you, through the power of the Spirit of Jesus, our Lord. Amen.